special needs services over in Ossining and other places, and it becomes a big challenge. It also becomes a very big expense on transportation costs. So what changed? People have been talking about this for about 10, 15 years, and they never pulled the trigger on it. The change is the school districts, now that they participate in UPK, they too are looking for providers and locations to centralize universal pre-K services. So because of that, we were able to partner with our school districts and offer this new exciting opportunity for what's referred to as a graded model, supported by UPK, state and school district funding, as well as county funding, where you have typical and atypical pre-K children together, centralized in Putnam County, provides a better education experience, it cuts down on those long transportation times, and it has the potential to save over $1 million in taxpayer spending over the life of these agreements. So, huge win. You would think everyone jumped up and down and supported this. I thought they did. Unfortunately, it got very scary in the last few months, where it was very much put at risk within debates in the county legislature, to the point where some people were shut down from speaking. That I actually had to walk down the hall and speak at the podium, and I don't want to misspeak. Nancy, can you clarify if I'm speaking out of turn here? But I think if the cameras were shut off, which is another topic, they weren't always filmed or live streamed, they are now, thank God. But had that not been filmed, I don't think they would have done this. But because the live stream was on and the cameras weren't shut off, we basically browbeat people and shame them into reconvening the meeting, opening it back up, adding it to the agenda, and letting some of these parents speak. So the questions that legislators supposedly had could actually get answered. That's how you're supposed to exchange and debate, have an open discussion in public, under under the sunshine of, it's not daytime, it's nighttime, but still. So in the end, it got done.
Our legislators wanted to meet individually with the committee that was establishing this program, and it's kind of illegal for just a couple of legislators to have that information and not others. And we should convene as a body to have this open discussion with the county, and that's what we did. But like a lot of things, the county executive needed to spend time putting the plan together, and have almost a complete plan before presenting it. That's what happened. And that's always the hard thing in government, is we come with a presented plan and the public's or the legislators are like, you didn't tell me about it. We have it going on here in our own town. It's that's the nature of government, and that's sort of one of the unfortunate things that I think we could do better at. I don't know how, but
it's
that's
tough.
what happened, and it was crazy.
So
he raised his voice, and it was great.
And you planned that whole thing. I'm like, I was dressed like this with a baseball cap. I was not prepared to go down there.
I got tape.
It was pretty wild. But the reality is, we tried it. So we had a preliminary meeting in Friday in February, but it was put together pretty last minute because I didn't know if it was going to be ready yet. And then we mentioned it to State of the County in March, and then there was a presentation to the legislature in April. But those are all the steps that we try to build in buy-in, and people celebrate it. But then when you have a proposal, well, here's the proposal, ask questions. You want to ask questions, put it in writing, and ask it so everyone can see it. But what you don't do is have one individual legislator push an alternative site because they know somebody and try to sideline every other legislator out of the conversation. That is not okay. I have a big problem with that. And it's to me, blatant violation of the open meetings law, to Nancy's point. You can't just carve out other legislators, but also that's not good government. If you have a better idea, share it with everybody so we can talk about it. But at the end of the day, we're in a place now where we still have some more work, some budgetary resolutions you can pass the legislature. There's a position that's going to be created to help oversee this. That's factored into the expense, still savings taxpayers. And I need to enter the agreements formally with the school districts. But huge accomplishment, and it's going to make a real meaningful impact.
Kevin, did you end up in this space sharing situation you were hoping for?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the building works well too.
It does. So the beauty of this is it's not just some random space. Like I didn't know these people. They're not like Kevin Byrne's friends. You know, it's community-based services is a very well-known nonprofit that's done a lot of work in Dutchess County. They have an intra-arts facility that they created, and it's in Patterson, Putnam. And what they do is they provide services to people of different abilities, physical and intellectual development disabilities, but people of every age. So they deal with a lot of adults too. So for them and their model, this is good because it's introducing families to their building and their nonprofit. So as they get older, like it's beneficial to them for people to know about it. It's very much mission aligned for them. And it's a creative service where they infuse the arts as a way to give therapy and teach people. And it's also just a beautiful space, and it checked a lot of the boxes that the health department had because you're dealing with children. You know, with the state education department that needs to approve different agreements for us to do this. So it's a home run, but if successful, we hope it can expand. I mean, I don't know if I said this, but we had parents show up to those meetings and advocate, and even though it's in Phillipstown, there was at least one individual from Phillipstown that drove all the way over there to advocate.
Every meeting, right?
Yeah. So that's big. So, and I think.
Well, and I think the end result too, as much animosity as there was because of the process, it's always a difficult thing. The end result was the support and the real encouragement from the other legislators about the program, to the point where they even said at the end, like, Nancy, you need this over on your side of the county too. So there's the hope someday, depending on population, how many children we actually have in that program from here, is to get some similar kind of program here.
Absolutely. And we want this to be countywide.
And for them to say that, my colleagues who know what it's like over there for me, for them to say, you need that there, Nancy. Those are the things that are happening that, we have these difficult things that we work through, and the end result is we just get closer together, I think. That's what's been happening. It's been quite nice, actually. Yeah. Thanks to you too.
I think we got some fresh faces with perspectives on the board, and that's a benefit of I guess elections and term limits, whichever way. But you get new faces, new people, which help.
We just get tired of fighting too. let's see what we can get done, right?
Yeah, and this is one of the focus of the things that.
That's what we're all asking.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's a big one, and also I view this as a way where the federal government isn't coming down and saying you need to do this. The state government is saying you need to do this. This is the county, local leaders working together. Everyone, we talk about property taxes and affordability. Most locally elected leaders will say, well, school taxes are in most cases, the largest portion of the property tax bill. Well, here we are working with the school districts creatively to come up with a new program that's going to improve quality of life for these young families, improve their educational experience, because every study in the world has shown that early education helps provide better educational outcomes as they grow and they evolve. So this is going to help everybody, and it saves taxpayer money. Like, why wouldn't we want to do this? So, and it is because of our small size as a county. So perhaps other similarly sized counties, in New York or the country can look at this one day and model it. That would be, to me, that's like the big feather in our cap when our good work gets spread around other places, because then the impact we're having is much bigger.
Does it replace? Sorry, one more question on this topic. Does it replace? I'm thinking about a neighbor who, when their child was small, had someone from the county come to the house. No, that's a different set of supports.
Yeah, that might be through either social services or health. So this is different for those educational services. This isn't an external visit.
I think it was a speech thing or something, but
They still have that.
They'll still have that.
But it's hard, because we don't have providers, a lot of providers in Putnam County, so there's a long wait list.
Yeah.
It's going to be something.
Yeah, so one of them is something like, we have how many? They're not all going on these long rides, right? So some of them go to Green Chimneys, right? So we don't have that robust provider list that our Westchester does. We're were small. But that's the other, we have to have contracts with those agency providers that are going to be centralized within the new facility. So it's exciting. And another program that we've rolled out, sorry, it's in Riverside County so far, but it's Part 3 transit. It's Patterson, bleeds a little bit into Southeastern Carmel. But the reason we started there was because it's revenue neutral. We looked at the utilization rates of the fixed transit route, public transit, over in Patterson, grossly underutilized, where we were paying almost double per rider what we would pay any other fixed route. So what we did was we replaced it. It took a little while. It started, what, mid-March? Late March? No, I'm sorry, May.
May 12th.
It got May,
Yeah.
because we were hoping one. It got
Yes.
again postponed because of the licensing agreements. It had to get a livery license from the state. So in May. But all the data that we got so far, it's a little early. Utilization is almost, 2 times what it was previously on the fixed route. And this new system is an on-demand system where it's more like an Uber ride-sharing type of model, where we dispatch these smaller vehicles and transport people for whether it's just certain sites. So not entirely perfect. We started small. It's a pilot program, but the goal is if we see this being a proven concept, it's something that we can expand services with. So whether it's gaps in services, like obviously we don't have public transit over here other than the trolley or something else. It's not really your traditional definition of public transit, right? So same thing with Putnam. They don't really have a lot. But something that's not lost on us is paratransit needs. So I went up to the State Assembly and Senate the last 2 years to testify for their budget hearing on transportation. It's my opportunity where I whine about our condition of state roads, Route 301, 52. They're actually expanding 52. That's over in Carmel County or Dutchess. The 301 certainly needs some TLC too. But one of the things we talked about was paratransit needs. So this could help fill those gaps. We don't know what the cost to expand it would be just yet. The first is like, will people use this? Are seniors going to use the app or are they not going to use the app? Everything we've seen so far over the last several months is the answer is yes, which is good. Because if the answer was no, well then this isn't going to work. So, but that's an exciting one where if the federal government and state government allow us to continue to use these funds to expand service, I think it'll be a really good opportunity for folks in Phillips.
Let's pass along some feedback from Butterfield last week.
Sure.
I'm sure that you've heard this too. So there's a fleet of county cars that sit parked at the senior center. Not just the buses that pick up for lunch, but there are small cars that say in memory of Jane.
Senior, well, they were donated.
They were donated, right? And they're sitting parked all the time. And that particular group of seniors is wondering why, if as this program builds, if that fleet could be put to better use rather than staying parked, getting people to appointments from this side, etc. I don't actually know what that fleet of sedans is for, so maybe you can
figure that.
elucidate that.
We can get you an answer quick on that. That shouldn't be too long to figure out what those are for. If it's for public employees, for other programs.
But it says in theory, it's for senior
They
services.
do,
Right?
and I'm not
The
sure,
seniors do
those are the
transportation.
cars that they use for the volunteer
For
program
senior
that they
corps?
have for the senior corps. And they do have volunteers that take seniors and disabled folks, but that could probably be part of the senior program, not the disability program.
Yeah.
That takes seniors to appointments. So an interesting thing with that the program that Kevin is talking about is different. So those are our county-owned cars.
Yep.
This is like an Uber
Right.
on demand.
Right.
But so there's another program that came up just last week too, because someone was concerned and called and said, the state cut the funding for this Go Granddaddy program, it's called, and they actually didn't cut the funding. They doubled the funding. The program is in such high demand that the county used all of the funding by March. And we do have double the money coming in now, but the county had to cut trips per senior. Whereas they had 4 trips per senior per month, they narrowed it down to 2 because it's just in such high high demand that we have to make it fair across the board. So the county does, our county dollars from the general fund supplements that program too, in addition to the state doubling it. But and those cars may be used for that.
Okay.
There's a lot of this OSR.
You can help answer the question with the folks. I'll
Yeah.
connect you to the folks.
Yeah, these, but there are senior programs separate that help with transportation services, but they're more limited for what type of transportation services they get. This is, what we're talking about is more just public transit.
Yep.
So if you drive through Cornwall, you might see that they are like sedans. I wish they were Fords or not. They're Hyundais or Toyotas, I forget. But they lease. The VIA is the company that does it, that we contract with. They're a pretty large provider. They do similar things in other places. But I think it works for us because to fill in gaps in services, it's not necessarily feasible to do a whole fixed route when the riderships can be so low. But for this, I think this is a more creative way to do it.
Kevin, do you want to jump to a few other topics for
Sure.
people who can't stay down too long?
Sure.
Because Kat wanted to raise something.
Go ahead.
Just out of sequence, I realized.
It's what we're good with the public transit. Those are two big things I want to talk about: with sales tax and the public transit, because I feel like they're very specific.
And the budget coming up.
Sure. Go ahead, Kat.
So I'm on the library board of Heidi. You mentioned that you got her signs for her amphibian crossing.
Oh yes,
And
okay.
I was like, oh, that's how government works. You just ask for things and you get signs. So here I am. I am here on behalf of a few other people, but one of the things that I recently moved up here, right off 90. And to get to Little Stony Point, there isn't a continuous sidewalk. And we also live near someone who happens to be in a wheelchair, and we're just trying to put this on the radar as something that would be important to not only local residents, but also people.
You know what, the sidewalk on the state road?
Yes, and you've actually been, you need to bring Nancy, you've been part of the communication thread with the new Region 8
DOT.
person. And there's an on-site visit scheduled for I believe next Thursday at 1:30.
It's been a lot of emails from lots of people.
Yeah, well, but Brian he took things into his own hand and started filming himself trying to get down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Saying, I can't get to my essential needs. It's not just Little Stony Point. It's very hard for me to get to the grocery store. It's hard for me to get. And the default response was an auto response from DOT saying funds are available for your local community. Yes, we realize that it's kind of beyond the scope of what we can do given all the other infrastructure things we're dealing with. And since we're talking about routes on 90 anyway, can we actually be at a table with DOT having the conversation? It became clear from recent meetings with the school district and parks and the Fjord Trail folks that perhaps that evaluation of the 90 corridor was not as in-depth as it could have been in the DGIS.
Any other questions?
No, I guess
Thanks, Mayor.
Over to you. Yeah, no, that was it.
Well, it's helpful when I do these things. I don't always get participation from local elected officials, so I appreciate when we do. More often than not we do, but not always, so it's very helpful. And I will say this, for my first year as county executive, the person that brought the crossing, was it Turtle Crossing?
Yeah.
The person that brought it up to my attention was
Yeah.
But then at Nelsonville, it was brought up again, I think in advance, because I think that first time we were trying to just like put it together, it's always hard to find out like when this
Well,
is
the
happening.
DEC has that program every year.
Every
year.
Well, yes, but what happened at the Nelsonville meeting was,
Yeah.
I actually let the Hudson Heights Land Trust know that you were going to be there, and Nadia came from the Land Trust. And then we had sent you a letter, and then there was follow-up, and my husband, who does the amphibian crossing, runs after the street. He was extremely grateful for those signs telling people to slow down, and it really did make a difference.
Good.
So they got a big sign, and then they got smaller signs. There were a lot of volunteers up there, and it really made a big difference for people, and kids, to feeling safer. It's still,
Was this
it's
thing
still
with
scary.
the cleanup that we do with the line? years we would just go out there in our clothes like this and clean up, but because of the, county administration's generosity, they give us vests. They were giving us pickers, and they actually brought a new sign this year to say, careful. It was terrifying, walking along 301 and cleaning up the road. So it goes a long way, that resource of signage, cones, orange things out, because it's really terrifying. But now we have this vacuum truck. So I'm hoping we can eliminate these kids going out on the roads cleaning up, and we can just then we're vacuuming turtles. So I don't know what to do. It's just think about all these things.
On that note, though, I think the county's DPW, in our first year, we professionalized our highway facilities department into a Department of Public Works. They entered into an agreement, and the legislature did it by resolution. I still need to sign the actual agreement because it empowers me to sign the actual agreement that has a shared services with every town and village in the county, which is huge. Like the fire service, we have this, and at EMS we have this. You have mutual aid agreements with your neighboring departments. So if there's an emergency, if you can't get out, we pick up the slack and help each other. You would think local municipalities would have that in an emergency, like when we have FEMA or declaration. We always just rise to the occasion and help each other, but there wasn't anything really formally structured. Now there will be, which I think is really huge. And all the feedback that I got from our local elected leaders is that it's been very positive. So I think that's going to be a new thing. I don't think any other county in the area has anything like it.
It's the first in the state, I think.
Yeah.
And we benefited from it already on an informal basis on Fishkill Road when we had a sewer line break on Fishkill Road, and the town of Kent and the county came and helped us repair that, replace the pipe, repair the top until FEMA can come through. But it was a lifesaver because if we contracted it out, it would have been much more money. So it's good to formalize it. It's working.
It's just depending on the scale of the project, unfortunately, there's prevailing wage costs, things like that. It just makes a lot of sense to do things in-house when you can, if you have a talent. So I don't want to be growing government to make it some big behemoth and compete with Westchester or small. But the reality is we need to be able to deliver on those core functions of government that we rely on for essential services. If we start being too cheap, not frugal, really cheap, we're going to end up spending 10 times more in the long run. And that's where you got to strike that balance. So that's a big deal.
I know we have a lot of library board members here. You'll meet with the libraries before,
Oh, we're talking about budget?
budget. You
So
formally meet with the county executive, right? And then sometimes you come before the legislature during the October meeting.
So I believe letters have been sent out already to those that have traditionally been treated as an outside agency, so they can get together and submit their proposal. The legislature formally finishes their resolution on the process. I think this month coming up, July. Yeah. So that will happen. But we've been already just trying to get ahead of it, preemptively communicating so we can get whatever we need to schedule those meetings. So what I typically do is I've tried to be pretty disciplined about this. Anyone that wants it's not grant funding, county funding for a county budget for specific services, there's a list of criteria they have to meet. So as long as they check every box and have all that criteria, I'll meet with them. Those that are incomplete and don't, provide the minutes, the tax information, I think that, I'm not gonna, waste their time or mine, but the libraries are always, have their stuff together. So we will meet with them during our department budget meetings that we have our outside agencies. I will try to encourage as many of these outside agencies to meet virtually, just so we can kind of move it along. Particularly, I think, in the libraries, because you have all these different stakeholders from different libraries. It's easier to have them in a Teams meeting, and I'm sure they'll make their case for whatever they're looking for. But what I've shared this too. It's what we put in is what the administration believes is justified based on their information. It does not preclude the legislature from making changes, whether it's increases or cuts. So typically it gets increased or it's flat. So that's the first step of the process is kind of now. The next big step, and we have our department meetings and our budget meetings with all these different stakeholders. That rolls into what I ultimately believe is justified and then is presented to the legislature by me as the executive. That's referred to as the executive budget or the tentative budget in our charter. Then there is about a month and a half of budget meetings with the county legislature where if you're unsatisfied with what I presented, you're welcome to go to those legislative meetings and ask for more. Sometimes they don't like it when I say that. I'm not saying Nancy, but that's the job. That's like, how dare you send them? Like, well, they should go and say if they like what's in there. Hey, thank you for voting for this. I know it's appreciated. Or, hey, we appreciate this, but we'd like more. This is why. Or, I don't think anyone's going to go to a ledge meeting and say, yeah, I want less. So that would be something to see. But they get to make adjustments, and based on their adjustments, they can either draw down on the program, they could increase the tax levy, they could draw more from our general fund or contingency. There's all these different things that they can do. So that needs to be done legislatively. Whatever modifications the legislature makes with their votes, they need a majority to make a change. Then it goes to me. And sometimes some legislators don't like when I say this, but it's the truth. It's not finalized until the executive acts. I have to approve or veto it. So if I approve it, it's done, it's in, their modification is fine. If I veto it, then I need 6 votes to override my veto. If they don't, it then defers to what the executive's tentative budget is. So that's where it's like, so it's not done, it's done, and then if I veto it, and they can override me, then it's done. That's like the last piece, pencils down, it's over. But when there's real division within the legislature, the way our county charter is written, it defaults to the executive's budget. If the legislature fails to pass a budget, it's not like the state of New York, or like we're shutting down the government, or we're going to do these continuing resolutions. It defaults to whatever the executive's budget is.
So it's in your interest to make sure that it's tight.
It is.
At the beginning, yeah.
It is. And also, it's we have a pretty powerful legislative branch, more than any other county government I've ever seen. And Dane's worked in a lot of Dane's, my chief of staff has worked in Orange County, Dutchess County. This is one of the more powerful legislative branches, probably in the state. But this particular executive power is one that tilts towards the executive. That's good for Phillipstown. So I would say this, Nancy helped advocate for this. The outside agencies beyond the libraries, a number of outside agencies or nonprofits were held flat. And I did that based on what was justified. I looked for strategic partnerships with the county. They should be contracts, and they should be doing something that the county would otherwise maybe have to do. Libraries fit that bill. But even though some were held flat and kept at a base level of funding, and some got modest increases up to 3%. We did add a couple new agencies. So Phillipstown Hub was the most notable. They were given $15,000 from the county budget to help support them. And quite frankly, their new location on Route 9, I believe. Yes, Route 9. The other one was CPAP, which is the Community Engagement Police Advisory Board. The county legislature, county government, I sign it too, pass a resolution every year, basically designating them as our advisory board on community policing. I'm oversimplifying that, but that's like their entity. So that funding, they got $10,000. It's supposed to help them with their outreach efforts. One of the other, this is good for libraries to know.
When you meet with them, tell them to come on here.
Okay, that's good. And they should go to
And I do that say the
they
same.
should go to the ledge meeting
They
when they're looking for funding.
Just while we're on it, my beef with that organization, it's not a beef, but they were, I thought, established to hold the sheriff accountable, and we need his policies published online, and that still hasn't happened. We sent a resolution to New York State promising to publish our policies, our sheriff's policies online, and that still hasn't happened. So that's my thing. That's just one of the things I keep hammering at. But that's not. It's an elected official just like us.
Yeah.
So it's up to him whether he wants to do it or not.
And that dates back. Look, full disclosure, I was in the assembly when the CPAP started, and it was because, I think it was in the aftermath of George Floyd. Andrew Cuomo, the governor at the time, through executive order, mandated in every local government to create like these groups to review all the policing standards. I actually thought it was, at the time, I thought it was quite offensive. I'm like, you're insinuating that local policing is doing something nefarious. So like, I was like, and some already have boards, and they already go for these things. But the reality is, it happened. I think that there were some good things that people identified, and CPAT, rather than just go away, formalize their existence as a nonprofit. The county government is not required to do a resolution every year and give them this like designation as our advisory group, but we do. And for the most part, I think it's been helpful. I think just community policing and community outreach is very important. When I was in the assembly, Yorktown, their chief, Bob Noble, happens to live in Putnam County, he's an APAC resident. I think does an amazing job. And they do their Coffee with a Cop event. But it's not like a one and done. They do it all the time, every month, all year round. And you don't need a police chief there. Sometimes it's yeah, but it's just, it's kind of like, I think school resource officers are very helpful in schools, and we're blessed to live in a very safe county in America, and part of it isn't just law enforcement. I always say it's a reflection of the people who live here, but having a good relationship with law enforcement goes a long way. Like, I don't think most people that live here, I don't think are afraid of law enforcement, because they have good experiences and relationships with them. That should be the prevailing thing everywhere. It's not, but I feel like in Putnam County, it's more so the prevailing thought.
I think so. We do have a reputation that it's like an unofficial reputation for some of those things we were trying to correct in the policy. So I think that was a good thing. And now with other enforcement agencies coming through Mass, that's an issue too that I hope that maybe we can address on a local level.
Okay, I'm sure which one we're talking about, but
Well, we're talking about ICE coming in with masks on.
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
It's for all levels of law enforcement, so that's probably going to be one that's going to
Yeah, it's
feel
really
like
hard.
a disagreement. But I think in general, like for this county, you should see less of that anyway, because we're not some of that. Any element of criminality is going to attract more law enforcement engagement. If we're one of the safer communities without as large of a presence of that, I think it's less likely, which is a good thing. But again, I don't. You look at those safety rankings, and like people, politicians will always thump their chest and say, "Well, they're the safest county in America." I'm like, hey, you should. Like, I would be. If it was somebody else, not me, I would be like, "Yeah, you should. It's a good thing." But it is not all law enforcement. It is a credit to our health department, right? It's a credit to, just the safe community in general. There's so many other things. Law enforcement, big part of it, but every first responder, EMS agency. We're at a point now, and Nancy, you shared deep with us too. It used to all be volunteer-led, all of our EMS agencies. And I had people pushing me very hard when I took office to just get the county to take over all of BLS, basic life support. Ambulances. I ain't gonna do it. I refuse to do it. I said, first of all, it'd be controversial, but I spent over 15 years in volunteer emergency services, 10 years in Kent, and spent a lot of time in Putnam Valley Ambulance Corps too. I'm not gonna be the person to put the nail in the coffin into volunteer services. But the reality is, whether I like it or not, every volunteer EMS agency has staff. Every single town has some EMT getting paid. So we're at a point where it's like this hybrid model, where we're kind of doing that anyway. The county has paid paramedics, the locals have paid EMTs. So it's kind of moving along. The fire service is still very much volunteer. But those people, whether they're career or not, paid or volunteer, they're still not getting paid a whole lot. So I think they're a credit to our safety designation teams.
And hopefully this state will, there's a big push to make EMS essential. There's a big package on the state level. I don't know if it passed actually.
Part of it.
Some of it did.
So
ambulance service isn't essential. So during COVID, ambulance workers were not essential workers, believe it or not, and it's still not. So there's a push. We're trying to support that locally too.
you passed a resolution pushing the state, New
will
it's,
cost municipalities,
Yeah.
there will be a cost to it, but I think it's
because the
necessary.
pushback is unfunded mandate, but
Mhm.
who really can objectively, honestly say that EMS is not a mandated function of local government? It is, whether it's in law or not, it really ought to be, we're all obligated to do it. County government isn't obligated to provide paramedic services, but we spend $3 million a year countywide to do it, most counties don't. So it's not mandated, but we took on that obligation in the 1990s, and it's a good one. It saves money by not having every local town have a paramedic service, and the call volume for paramedics is lower than for basic life service calls, so or support calls. So I think it's happy. The good thing they passed was they could bill for treatment, not just for transportation.
And follow-up, right, is it?
What's that?
And follow-up?
I think so. Well, we're gonna. It's not done yet. We're exploring the opportunity for what's referred to as community paramedicine. That would be countywide. It would be a modification of our existing contract with Empress, which is the county's advanced life support provider of the paramedic services. So when you call 911, it's not just like a broken arm, but you have heart pains, you need to go to a cath lab, it's serious issues. A paramedic will go, and they'll say Putnam EMS, and it'll say Empress on it. One of the things we're looking to do is modify it and with something called community paramedicine with a community paramedic, which it would require a very close relationship with the hospitals, and what they can do is do follow-up visits. Kind of like, I never had this growing up, but if you go back in like the early 1900s when like doctors would visit you at home. So like you could have like paramedics do that extra follow-up, keep some of those, I hate to say this, like I'm not trying to be offensive, but the frequent flyers that constantly go from one place to the hospital, they're costing taxpayers a lot of money, and they're taking resources away from the hospital and the emergency department. So we're spending money through either it's Medicaid, Medicare, or sometimes the hospital eats the cost because the federal law in TALA requires they must take these people. So wouldn't it make more sense to like get them the care they need so they don't have to go to the emergency department? It saves money and it provides better outcomes. So that's one thing.
I got sick in Essex County, and it was toward the end of COVID, and I needed hydration, and an ambulance came and they were able to have a Zoom call with the doctor in the hotel room and give me an IV in the hotel room. So I wasn't being taken to the emergency room, I wasn't taking up a spot. And so I was chatting with the EMTs that were there, and they said it's used really frequently by seniors who live alone, and they don't need to be sitting in an emergency room for hours and hours and hours. They need baseline care from the home, and I've always wondered if that's something that could be done here in Putnam. Here we do have a lot of people who go in for very basic needs like that.
So there's the biggest barrier was the state passed the pilot program that they needed to extend, but the other big issue is how do we fund these services? And forever, EMS was funded based on local taxation, and you could bill for transportation. So if you call 911, so the ambulance would only bill the insurance company, whether it's private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, if you transport to the hospital. So there's not an incentive for them to transport to the hospital. So if they provide care at home, your insurance company ain't paying a dime. So when the state of New York passed, probably going to get challenged, I'm assuming, by the insurance companies. I'm not sure where it lands right now. But that it's monumental because it's less expensive to treat in place than transport if you don't need to transport to the hospital. So, but that was a big barrier for, I think just ambulance and EMS in general. But that's a state policy. That's not something we can do in the county government. But the community paramedicine is something that we could do and have. We were already the first in the state to do a countywide paramedic service. that Empress contract that was in the late 1990s under Bob Bondi, we were the first countywide ALS paramedic service in the state. And it's a big, since Bob Cuomo, our EMS director, at the time, he's back as our EMS director. He's awesome. He was
Train me to
huge part.
be EMT.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
me too. Awesome. So we could the first countywide community paramedics we provide. Other counties that do it don't do it countywide, but that would be a real good way to. And it's to me, it's like it can save money too. So if you do it, you can improve outcomes and save taxpayer money, even if it's saving Medicaid, or Medicare from the state. That's still taxpayer money. If I can help the state and provide a better service, great. I want to do it.
Well, that's expensive somehow. So, it's got to be a path forward.
And sometimes it's been grant funded too. That's another thing. So the EMS is a big deal. The new fire training center is open. I think, when is it?
July 10th.
July 10th. They're already using it.
The ribbon cutting.
Yes, but we postponed like a grand opening numerous times. And I got a little flack for it, but the reality is State Senator Peter Harkin bought $300,000 to help us build that thing. So anyone else that gives $300,000 to build the thing, I will wait until they can make it. They were in session in Albany for a long time. They just got out a few weeks ago. So we're going to be celebrating that grand opening. It's a brand new state-of-the-art $1.3 million fire and EMS training facility. It's been parts of it open and closed intermittently for over a decade. So that's going to help keep our people safe. And unlike other counties, we do not charge back those local agencies. Some counties charge back fire and EMS. We do not. It's something that we took on. It would be unreasonable to think every local fire department could build their own training facility, so the county does it. And it's really cool. Dane's giving me, you're saying 5 minutes, is that what that is?
But on that note, that's one of the things the county executive and I talked about just a couple of days ago about how to get the bureau, how to get more resources out of the bureau for our local agencies, and that's always been my wish. Is to, I mean, they take care of a lot. We have this shared service with the fire training center. It is over, but my hope is always, whether it's grant writing when those safer grants come out from the federal government or what. But I don't want to talk anymore. I want to know if you guys have any questions.
Yeah,
I'd rather listen than
I'll stay as long as I can. I know I'm going to pull away, but I've talked a lot. There's only been a couple of questions from constituents. I know, was it Kat?
Cat, you catch it.
To leave. Other questions I saw, gentlemen, sir? Kevin Byrne?
John Reinhardt.
John?
Sorry I'm late for the party here.
It's all good. It's all good. John, thanks for being here. We talked about, so just the sales tax, we talked about the pilot program for mass transit, we talked about turtles, we talked
No,
about...
not turtles.
Frogs.
Frogs.
Oh,
Frogs and salamanders.
I'm worried about turtles.
sorry. Amphibious.
Well, thousands a year crossing.
Can I just
EMS.
say, the things we're talking about here and are things that I've just been looking at for years, decades, and I've been fortunate to have Gabrielle Soto from Puerto Rico with me for the past almost 2 weeks now, and I'm learning so much about what I take for granted. And they have no libraries in Puerto Rico. Their education system barely exists. All these things that we're talking about the government providing funding or services for things that we don't have. I mean, they don't have. So it's a real eye-opener for me. And I'm so glad for this young man to be shadowing me and teaching me.
Welcome.
You also went to Constitution Island the other day, which was awesome.
It's really cool.
Really cool. The superintendent of West Point was there, kicking off our 250th anniversary of American independence, and the unique story that we have as Putnam County tied to our independence as a country. It's pretty cool. So it was my first time I actually got to go on the island, and it's quite the gem. And the county supports Constitution Island by utilizing some of our buses to support their tours on the weekends, which are now back open, which is really cool.
And we do give them some funding.
I have a
Yes, sir.
question. Are there any funds available for a flagpole for the library?
For a flagpole for the library,
We have a problem with when we're trying to do something with it.
So we don't, like, the county doesn't have a grant program specific to support local agencies, whether it's nonprofits or municipalities. The only method we have is through the budget, which this has been my argument against it. It's inherently a political process. In my first budget, I put in, this is back in 2023, two programs for municipal partnership and community assistance. One was for nonprofits, one was for municipalities. I say that because libraries sometimes are these hybrids, like depending on how it's set up. Both of those were cut in favor of cutting the tax levy by the legislature.
Except for me.
Yes, so look, and I praise the tax cut. So we have done other things. The only way we do it is through contracts with outside agencies for the budget. So the libraries do get funding through the county through that budget process, and with their budget supported by the county, they could use that for a flagpole or not. But if you want something funding specific for a flagpole, the county doesn't have grant funding like that. We don't.
That answers the question.
I get it. Look, you can ask.
Consider it when you
ask for
the
bullet aid
outside
from your
agency
assembly
funding,
person.
you know.
I don't even know how much a flagpole costs. When I was in the assembly, I was able to get back close to 13 to 20 grand for each library through bullet aid, which is awesome because like no strings.
I'm gonna ask the hard question because it could be an option for this
Sure.
problem is maybe you purchase the equipment that's needed, and if there could be a shared service with DPW is probably very
For
experienced.
the installation.
And that would be really hard. We'd have to be very transparent about it and asking the legislature, but being very patriotic, we say the pledge sometimes 3 times in a night. They would be in
It's,
favor of that.
I don't know.
I
if
figured
they
you
install
did a
it.
hard
They
shot.
can install it live.
Well, we already had help from.
I was gonna say, we had the county come and
Yes.
help untangle it a couple of times,
Yeah.
and the highway guys brought the bucket truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's been an ongoing problem.
Yeah, it's not
Yes.
my problem.
We have to
There's some-
We've done
relocate
that. We
or
helped.
eliminate the
We
tree.
did the memorial bearers
With help,
in Phillipstown.
maybe we
No,
should
yeah.
help in
DPW
some
comes
way
out,
of
so-
services
Yeah.
rather than purchasing something.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at it, does it make sense to relocate it or buy a new one and do a new installation? Initially, I'm thinking that it'd be easier just to buy a new flagpole, cut that one at the ground, and put a new one in at better locations. It's just, people were wondering why we don't have a flag.
So then ask, we can put before DPW first, and then we obviously have to go
Thank you.
before the county executive and the legislature.
That's just for the help with the service of the
Yeah,
installation.
I honestly wasn't expecting somebody to pull out.
Let me see what I can.
They
Wait
did
till
say
October.
that.
Also, bullet aid is when you get library aid, construction aid from sometimes from the state, they apply. Bullet aid's the best. 'Cause bullet aid is just like
Very
right in there.
creative with grants, so.
Yeah, that's bullet aid. And believe me, the state budget, when I first got into the state assembly, it was $156 billion. Now it's 220 something billion. So, I mean, the numbers almost always go up because the cost of goods and services go up. There's a whole array of reasons. But bullet aid ain't 13 grand. If you get bullet aid now, it's like 20 something. So, you
Well,
know,
just,
that's.
just to be clear, that DPW has been super responsive.
Oh, yes.
The 2 times we've called,
Yes,
they
oh,
come right away.
yeah.
So it's not, they're.
Johanna's been
they're-
keeping
I know how
us
much
very,
fun.
very informed about that and the participation. It's just that it's at a point now,
Yeah, and you
it's
do need
either
another option.
cut the tree down, which we don't wanna do, or try to relocate the flagpole. So,
How about a building mounted pole?
I know Dane's good about to yank me, but before we it's our last question. There's been some quiet people just listening, and that's fine. I'm flattered, but I want to make sure I'm not ignoring anybody. Is there any other? You don't have to wait until I come here to reach out to. Our office tries to be as transparent as possible. I say it, it upsets some of this lady's colleagues. We're the most transparent administration in Putnam County history. I say it because it's true. We live stream all of our public hearings. In fact, we live stream our public hearings for the legislature, live stream the public meetings. Not because people didn't want to, but some others, some didn't. But we also have a budget transparency website. You can go to PutnamCountyNY.gov and look it up yourself and you can see where all your tax dollars are going. I'm the only county executive in this county's history that, you may not know this, but when you get elected to public office, we are required to fill out something called the financial disclosure form. It gets filed with the county's Board of Ethics, and it's basically to help ensure that there's no conflicts of interest with county contracts or any public employees. I take my financial disclosure form, I post it on the website, so if I owed some bookie like 200 grand, that would compromise me, you would know. Newsflash, the only loans that I have are some college loans really that I still have in my home mortgage. But I put
Maybe
it up
this
there.
big, beautiful bill will help with those college loans that they're debating tonight.
Well, I've already paid off a lot of my loans, so I think I should pay off the loans too.
I paid off my loans.
I paid off my undergraduate loans, are paid off, graduate loans.
One more
Yeah.
payment on
It's a very
grad.
different time
And
when
it's
we
like,
went to college, sir.
It was definitely a different time, and it was harder.
Sure. It was, but we put that all out there because I do believe sunshine is the best disinfectant, and accessibility is important. When we say we think differently, it's not just about people with different abilities, it's about accessibility. I was embarrassed when I took office. I walked in and I'm like, why don't we have a handicap ramp? People that had a disability have to go to the basement of the county office building to go see their legislators and the executive. We have a handicap ramp in front there. We have a handicap ramp now at the Putnam County Veterans Park, at the upper lot, which we didn't have. And then the live streaming meetings. I had more access to the legislature during COVID when they live streamed it in audio only.
That was the only one on camera?
Oh yeah, but then in January of
Cameras on.
2020, it was audio only but not live streamed. So now it's taken time.
Tonight, or tomorrow night, I'm sorry to interrupt, but tomorrow night you can listen to the full legislature meeting where we're discussing about a public hearing on the ag districts. Everybody who's applied to be in the ag district will have a public hearing on that. And the main thing that I'm appreciative of on the agenda is the funding for the youth bureau's outfitting of their new space at Tilly Foster Farm. Great use for Tilly Foster Farm, in my opinion, finally. It's not a rock and roll or a wedding venue in my mind. It should be for this, and we're going to be allocating funds for the children to outfit it with all its furniture and everything. It's a big price tag, but I'm really happy to support it, and that's on the agenda tomorrow night. And you can watch it, or you can come over.
It'd be really cool. You got the Bosie's downstairs,
Yeah, it's
full of the
great.
restaurant.
I'm so
You have Cornell coming in, and you have Youth Bureau in there. It's really becoming more of an
And I know it's
educational-
far, it's over there, it's not here, but I'm happy that it's there for our use. Again, my goal is to get more services here, but, this is a wonderful thing we have at Tilly Foster, I believe.
And I think it's it's easier to engage in government. If you don't want to drive, the 30 minutes, it's not. If you don't want to, you can watch. Look, you can listen, watch. You can watch the next day. You can watch live.
Yeah, it's great.
So that's. Are they live streaming public hearings now? Because before they were live streaming the legislative meetings, the public hearing for the budget last year was not live streamed. So I don't know if they were doing public hearings.
Can't imagine they wouldn't right now, but we'll see.
They should. Well, to me, it's just like I live stream as much as we can, and if there's technical glitches, people understand, and just upload it after. But it's 2025. You got to be able to communicate with people how they want and where they are, and it makes sense. So awesome. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.